Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. I'm Catherine Tindall, partner here with Dominion. We're a specialty tax and accounting firm for the wealth management industry. And on today's episode, I have a very special guest with us, Whit Lanier. Did I get that right? He's the CEO of and co-founder of Amplify Reviews, which is a platform focused on helping financial advisors embrace online reviews on their own terms. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
I loved in the pre-show a statistic that you gave on how the industry is changing when it comes to starting to capture more reviews. Could you repeat that for the audience? I was impressed by kind of how much this area is changing when it comes to
so
reviews.
Right now, most of our clients are RIAs, right? Early on in the broad financial advisor industry, the advice I got was start there. They have a little bit of an easier time adopting new stuff.
Yep.
But so we started a year ago trying to benchmark and look at how this industry was adopting the use of testimonials in the wake of the change with the SEC marketing rule. And what we saw when we did that again this year was that just from summer of 24 to summer of 25, among one of the lists of the top 100 RIAs, we saw 400% growth. Now, yes, we're still on the front end of that adoption curve, but that acceleration is really remarkable, especially in an industry known for being a little bit slow moving. And I don't know if that's what you meant. The other thing, I do think from my previous startup that focused on reviews, I think it's just an inevitability that this industry will wind up adopting reviews just like every other industry has. We had a regulatory obstacle. It's out of the way. So I think that's sort of my starting claim, is that I think folks should accept that it's going to be inevitable that consumers will come to expect ratings and reviews about the financial advice professional that they're considering.
And it's something where I see this as a big generational change too, that, a lot of people in the younger generations, they do a lot of research and dirt digging before they even pick up the phone. I don't know if that's been your experience working with firms in terms of how reviews have changed things.
It's funny. We were coming out of COVID when we were first trying to target this industry. And in that moment in time, what a lot of people were talking about was how even the older generations were forced to become digital citizens while everyone was home. So to that extent, the digital usage lines have blurred a little bit in terms of an older demographic being as savvy about it. But the other thing that I always like to talk about is, yes, some cohort of people may start their financial advisor search at a search engine or at an AI chatbot. The majority is still asking for a personal or professional referral. But what we talked about earlier is I've seen data that if I'm looking for a referral, I'm going to wind up with 3 names. And whether or not I'm looking for reviews, I got to look these people up. I'm going to Google all 3 of these people. And if one of them has 50 5-star reviews and the other 2 have nothing, I cannot help but be influenced by that in terms of who I'm likely to reach out to first.
Yeah. And I guess on the practice management side for advisors, what are some of the biggest objections that you've seen with not implementing a review system, or, challenges when it comes to them actually trying to get something like this into the practice?
Well, we talked about some of these right before our official conversation here. So there is for many folks, if there's a compliance concern or fear, it is unfounded. Now, some of the aggregators still make it difficult, but some of the other bigger firms understand that they are hampering their own family if they are not letting them take advantage of this opportunity that the SEC has given them and created for them. People do worry about getting a bad review, and I've got a couple of rebuttals to that concern. The first one that usually once we articulate it helps people make sense to people. The SEC makes a distinction, and FINRA is very similar to the SEC, between testimonials and endorsements. Testimonials come from current clients, and endorsements come from anyone else, former client, celebrity, you name it. What most prospects expect to see is testimonials. They want to hear, what do your current clients have to say? And so in order to get a bad review, here's what has to happen. If you are my advisor, Catherine, I have to think, I've been waiting until somebody sends me an opportunity to write a public-facing review to let Catherine know I've got a real bone to pick with her. And it seems to me the best way to do this is to tell the whole world what I'm really upset about. And I want her to continue to manage my money. And somehow I think this is the feedback mechanism that's going to make that work.
Yeah.
And once you get in that mindset, you understand why I think we don't have any 1-star reviews. We have a couple of 2-star reviews on the whole platform. We have a couple of 2-star reviews. And the other thing is, if you're lucky enough to get a 3 or a 4-star review, I guarantee you it will be a de minimis amount of your reviews, but it will make the whole program seem credible if you're willing to publish a 3 or 4-star review. So they're hard to come by. And if you do get one, it actually helps the credibility of your overall reviews.
Yeah, that's true. And usually, I know I've found this as a lay consumer of things. Like I'll look at a review, and if it's like a really low review, my bias is always towards the business, where I'll say, like, was this person just crazy? Because
that is why it's nice when ratings are paired with reviews. Because I know we have 2 1-star reviews. One of them, you can tell for sure this is a grumpy and difficult person.
Yeah.
The nature of what they're complaining about probably is not a reflection on the business. The other one, who knows? But that's one.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so I guess in terms of, actual implementation of something like this, I know for a lot of advisors, I imagine one of the objections is like, well, I'm afraid to bother the clients. I'm afraid to ask them, how do I actually do this in a way that doesn't feel, icky from a practice management perspective, if you've got, kind of feedback on that.
A few things. Number one, there are a few benefits to being a laggard industry for reviews, right? And one of those benefits is consumers have been well trained by other businesses. And yes, we've probably encountered some businesses that are annoying or persistent or overdo it when asking for a review. But in general, people understand it as sort of social capital, transactional capital. If I am able to deliver a good experience to you, this is one small thing you can do to reciprocate. So we do work with each of our customers to make sure that their outreach approach is not overdoing it. And so if we compare this to other industries, we have a relatively low throughput of clients. Everybody understands you're going to retain 98+% of the clients you have. So there's no need to bombard them. But the other thing is, I know you like sort of tactically, we generally recommend what we call sort of a heads up communication, which is before you send a review request, you make a mention in either a dedicated email or as part of a newsletter that you have going out that this is a new initiative and it's optional and everyone's going to get an opportunity. Then we think a dedicated ask email, most clients use our system, but they don't have to, that is very clear, to the point, several of the same calls to action, so you can skim the email and see what it is. And then, it takes 10 seconds to read. You decide whether or not you're going to do it. And that's that.
Catherine here. Just wanted to say thanks for tuning into the show and hope you've been enjoying it. Since we're all at the mercy of social media algorithms, if you wouldn't mind rating the podcast on whatever platform that you listen to, I'd really appreciate it. And also, if you're looking to stay in the loop on current tax updates, what the firm is working on, and just the things that I think you as a firm owner need to be aware of when it comes to the world of tax, you can sign up for our newsletter using the link below. I only send out editions when we have really useful things to share or things that I think are important to have your attention and energy on. So let's get back to the show, and thanks again for being a listener.
If you want to sort of articulate what the underlying concern is, it's that my client might think I'm needy or vain or egotistical if I give them an opportunity to write a review. And so then I always turn that around and I say, have you ever had that reaction to any business, much less a service provider with whom you have an intimate relationship where they know intimate details about your life? And I think that the last way that I frame it is, if you really want to deepen your relationships with your clients, they don't have to be one way where advisor is the only one ever giving anything to the client. It actually strengthens the relationship if you say, could you take literally 2 minutes? Could you take 2 minutes and do me a favor to help the health of my business? Clients are happy to have the opportunity to help somebody with whom they have a strong, trusting, and like I said, and many times sort of intimate relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess with the firms who have implemented this, what are some of the benefits that you've seen in terms of like improved client acquisition or retention, or just any, maybe statistics that you have of just how this has been transforming practices?
I wish I had harder data, Catherine, but maybe you know
It's hard
this.
to track. That's how marketing is. Yeah.
Well, especially in this industry, and especially because we talked about it's sort of low numbers. So one of the bigger firms that we implemented this with did do a phased roll in, and they did have calls to action on each advisor's profile, and they wanted to see what differences they saw before and after, and in the pilot group versus the control group.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, it was going to be hard to reach statistical significance. I
Yeah.
can give you a quick anecdote. So my previous startup was a very similar offering in healthcare. And after that had been live for a while with hospitals offering ratings of their own doctors, a completely independent consultancy that we didn't commission, didn't have anything to do with, went and looked at which elements of a physician's bio page have the biggest impact on conversion or somebody taking action to book with that physician. They found above clinical experience, above accepted insurance, ratings and reviews was the number one influence, and they found it was a 9 times lift on conversion. Now, yes, that's an anecdote. It's from out of industry. What I have heard is several clients just saying explicitly, in fact, one of them, a couple of weeks after they went live, said, I got a new client, and the beginning of the phone call was, the review I found online made it sound like you're exactly the type of advisor that I'm looking for. The other thing that we talked about before, right? The big ones that you can count on, search engine optimization, and now sort of AI chatbot visibility. Reviews are one of the best trust signals that are available, and it is external validation because they're written by clients. It is natural language that prospects may use because it's how your actual clients write. So that's sort of a built-in, that's why in our pre-conversation, I was saying this is one of the most powerful and wide-reaching tactics you could consider for 2026, because it's going to boost the conversion of prospects who find their way to your doorstep. It's going to help your visibility with search engine optimization or AI chatbots. If you're considering other marketing initiatives, this is basically a really cheap focus group to see what is it that my clients like. What, if I give them a blank slate, will they mention are their favorite things about working with me? And then if you're considering doing like a video testimonial, you don't have to guess which of your clients might have nice things to say. This is the dry run. You let everyone who have an opportunity to write something, and then you can follow up with the folks who said really nice things in writing.
That's great. And it's funny too. I was thinking about when it comes to the realm of reviews and everything, and it's specifically with marketing tracking. Something that I do, with firms that join us, is I'll always ask them, "So how'd you find me? And so what prompted you to reach out?" And actually asking them, like, "What channel did you find me through?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did you find me?"
On the same.
Can be really helpful, like when you don't actually have that data. And if you're starting to implement programs like this, or you've got multiple initiatives going on, like a review program, maybe you run a podcast for your niche, clientele, like if you work with anesthesiologists or whatever it is, and actually asking people like, how did you how did you go through my funnel in a less technical way?
No, I'm the same way, and people don't always even know the answer. But
Yeah.
what I do hear from my clients a lot of the time is that it may be, oh, a friend of mine recommended me, and I saw your reviews were fantastic, and like
Yep.
that is a very succinct summary of how the decision-making process works.
Yep, exactly. And especially even if it's not on the first conversation too, as you get to know people better. But
Right.
so when firms have been implementing this, I guess in the process of actually implementing and utilizing this as a resource, like any other practical examples that you can give from firms that you've worked with of what's worked well, or what have been challenges that they've had with implementation when it comes to actually getting like a program like this live?
Um, usually uh, I prefer it if I can speak with either a compliance officer, compliance consultant at the outset and make sure they understand. And I have a near perfect track record of helping people understand, the approach that we endorse is great. So look, obviously we offer a platform that helps manage the whole thing, but I'm a big evangelist for reviews any way you do them. And so for some advisors, they just want to go ask for Google reviews. For some advisors, it's early enough or small enough that they might think they don't need a platform or a process to do it. So generally, I think that's great. But your question did remind me of another thing. In terms of compliance concerns and what's going on, there was a Kitsis article, I think today, looking at enforcement actions that have happened since the SEC marketing rule.
Mm-hmm.
And the only ones that even graze testimonials or endorsements are ones where there was a clear avoidance of transparency. Like one that I remember stands out is they pretended it was an unpaid endorsement when it was paid. Look, that is egregious. And so to me, the takeaway is whether you're following our program or any structured program and any sincere effort to follow the marketing rule, I don't think you need to worry about that. But my anecdote is one of our now customers came to us after they had an audit. In the audit, they had a testimonials page on their website. And the auditor said, "Did you give all of your clients the opportunity to write a review?" And he said, "No, that's not really what I think of when I think of testimonials." And he didn't get penalized. He just got told, "Well, you have to take this page down unless and until you do that." And so we were able to get that page back up in 1 week with 10 times as many reviews. So that was a great success story. But
yeah, that's a win.
I don't say that to brag. I say that he was sincerely trying to follow the marketing rule. And the only thing that happened was they said, "Take that down until you do it in a way that we find compliant."
And that's going to be, I think for a firm owner like that, that has to be a very edifying experience, right? You went to the people that you thought were happy, but then you actually canvas your whole client base, and it makes you realize too just how deeply you're touching other people's lives. It's funny for me sometimes, some of the feedback I'll get from people, and I'll say something or I'll recommend something that I think is like, oh, this is fairly mundane, or this isn't a big revelation. And you can second guess yourself, but then when you get some of that feedback, in the form of those reviews, it can really help spur you, especially for people who are like solo practitioners, or small teams, really give you that sense of, oh, like we actually are doing a really impressive thing here. Like this is actually a really great thing that we're doing. And, where it's mundane and routine and seems simple to us, that it's actually not, to the clients. It gives you an opportunity for, buck yourself up too.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because you remind me of two other anecdotes. One, actually, the big picture idea is that the people that I encounter and interact with as financial advisors are very dedicated to the whole concept of fiduciary, to trying to do what is best for their clients. And they've just made that who they are. So they don't think they're never going to go ask for a pat on the back.
Yeah.
And so that is not the reason that they undertake a program like this. Although I will say broadly, this industry is terrible at collecting customer feedback in any way. It's surprising to me, and I understand maybe that's a topic for another podcast conversation. But one of our first RIA customers had a t-shirt made with the review that they got because it made them feel so good. People don't realize that they know what they're trying to do for their clients, and they are going to do their best regardless of what feedback they do or don't get, but they don't know how good it's going to make them feel when somebody tells them what you are doing makes a huge difference in my life. And
Yeah.
it feels pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. So for firms who are interested in learning more specifically about what you're doing at Amplify, could you give some more background on kind of how they can get some more information and then the types of firms that you work with specifically?
Sure. So I'd say connect with me on LinkedIn is the best opportunity. I try and post a decent amount of content that's informative, try and be entertaining. You obviously on our website, if you want to have a conversation, I love hearing how people are thinking about this. So those are the two obvious ways to do this. We've got a couple of good assets that I think will help people, including the research that I talked about that shows the growth in adoption. We can work with anyone who falls under the financial advisor umbrella. Our platform was built. So again, I alluded to this earlier. We had success in a different industry with a similar platform for healthcare. It has its own regulatory concerns with HIPAA and patient personally identifiable information, patient privacy. So we thought both the approach and the platform were relevant when we rebuilt it here. It was with an understanding of these regulatory concerns and how to both have a process that would be compliant and how to manage with appropriate documentation. With that said, we specifically focused, SEC and FINRA, but if you have any regulatory concerns, we think our approach can be easily adapted so that your review collection and display process will be compliant, whatever that means to you. And look, you cannot cherry pick only your favorite reviews, but we do think our approach gives you as much control as you can have within the compliance framework. So I'll give you one example there. If all you do is drive reviews to Google, I'm not going to say that's bad. Google reviews are very powerful. However, you don't have any way to try and make sure that only clients are going to do that, only current clients. And it is a compliance sort of ball of yarn if you want to go try and interact with those reviews to indicate whether they are or are not clients. So when I talk about giving advisors a little more control, if you're using a system like ours, you only ask your actual clients to write reviews, and we can refine a policy that says we're going to publish everything, but there's some things we obviously cannot publish. So the easy example is just offensive language, right? Maybe you have a really enthusiastic client who's dropping some language you don't want on your website. If you say at the outset, this is our policy and we're not going to publish that, then you're not cherry picking and you're not running afoul of the spirit of the regulations. You just need to be transparent about what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So for those of you listening, I encourage you to reach out on LinkedIn. We'll post the links below for amplifyreviews.com and then for Whit's LinkedIn for you to reach out and start a conversation. But I want to thank you for coming on the show. This is a great conversation, and it's one of those things where if you can get over kind of the psychological block of it, it's such an easy win in a lot of ways because I think you mentioned this at the beginning, and this is definitely true. In my experience, most firms, especially the smaller firms or solo practitioners, like they don't have a dedicated marketing person. And so being able to have something like this just kind of run on autopilot once you get it set up and, have that working in the background for you can be a really powerful and easy lift. So thanks for the work that you're doing with this.
Thank you so much. Said that well. Appreciate it.
So for those of you listening, links below, and I'm always interested in feedback. So feel welcome to send me a DM and tell me what you thought about the episode. But this was another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast.